The Carolina Hurricanes are going to have a lot of turnover this offseason with trades and free agency, but just who is on their way out the door and who could potentially be joining the roster come next season? Find out in this episode of Locked On Hurricanes.
You're Locked On Hurricanes, your daily podcast on the Carolina Hurricanes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey there, Caniacs. I'm your host, Jared Ellis, and you're listening to Locked On Hurricanes on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And as always, I'd like to thank you for making Locked On Hurricanes your first listen of this Wednesday afternoon. And it is now time to dive into some Carolina Hurricanes free agency. There is a lot going on, and a lot has come out regarding Carolina Hurricanes free agency. Last year, we lost half of our blue line. We had a lot of roster turnover, and it's looking like it's going to be the same this offseason because we have guys, Tony DeAngelo, Ethan Bear, Martin Necas, all restricted free agents, all have been given permission to talk to other teams. Nino Niederreiter and Vincent Trocheck are confirmed to be testing the free agent market, and they are, especially Nino Niederreiter, guys that you don't want to lose. I think we all realize that probably weren't going to be able to keep both of them, but you're going to want to try to at least keep one of them. And I mean, I'd be fine with keeping either one of them, but Nino Niederreiter is really the guy that I feel that they should really be actively trying to keep. And of course, the list goes on as far as guys that are going to be gone. And you have Ian Cole, Brendan Smith, Derek Stepan, Max Domi, and as I mentioned, Vincent Trocheck. All those guys are probably going to be gone. Maybe if they are able to come to a deal on low risk deal, probably a lot of these guys were short-term deals. Maybe they come back, but honestly at this point I don't see that happening. And that is what it is there. So but the one that frustrates me the most out of all of this is really Nino Niederreiter. I really don't understand the thought process of not trying to bring this guy back. He has really been an amazing player for you. Had a hell of a season last year, and why you wouldn't want to bring him back is beyond me. And obviously, I could almost guarantee it's coming down to money. And I do understand the thought process of not wanting to overpay. Nino, he isn't, your Sebastian Aho, Andrei Svechkov, a guy that is going to be carrying the offense kind of guy. But he is, a guy that's that secondary scoring that, let's face it, this team really freaking needs. And he has at multiple times through the past few seasons, whenever the top guys are stagnating and not producing, he is the guy that's going out there and putting pucks in the back of the net. Hell, he's doing it when the top guys are still producing as well. So I don't understand why you wouldn't want to bring him back. And the Tom Dundon is cheap argument, I don't necessarily agree with that 100%. I think that, he plays hardball too much with guys. And I think that has obviously came back to bite them. Could be worse, coming on in the future, depending on how this free agency goes, depending on how Dougie Hamilton, Alex Nedeljkovic, these guys that have left in the past, depending on how their careers pan out, it could bite them. But on the flip side, he hasn't stopped spending money since he took over the team. And he hasn't been one that's afraid to spend. This is, new to the Hurricanes and the fan base of, look at last year. They were pressed right up against the salary cap, and they had to pull off some real gymnastics for that Max Domi trade. So it's not that he's afraid to spend money. It's just, I think he's very much it's a his way or the highway kind of guy. And especially with Nino Niederreiter, that is not a move that you want to make. Obviously, you don't want to overpay. And I 100% get that. You don't want to be in a situation of, so many other professional sports teams out there. First one that comes to mind is Ezekiel Elliott with the Dallas Cowboys. You don't want to be in a situation like that where you massively overpaid the guy and he isn't producing the way you want him to. So you don't want to be in that type of situation, but he's not meeting these guys in the middle. And again, Nino Niederreiter, it's a guy that you don't want to do. He has been an absolute stud of a player since he came here from Minnesota. And, we all look back at that trade when it happened. Carolina fleeced the Wild and all that. It was such a good trade at the time. And for so long, it's felt like Nino is a piece of that core. But it's appearing that that may not be the case this offseason. And I 100% understand that you can't always keep everyone. And you don't need to always keep everyone. You look at the Hurricanes, they're struggling to get over that hump. They need to make changes. So changes need to be made, but I do feel that Nino is one of those guys that's a guy that you want to have on your team. And given maybe, tomorrow or the day after tomorrow or whenever, maybe a deal does get done, between these guys. Maybe something does get done, but I do feel that whenever he hits the free agent market officially, I don't feel he is going to be on that market for very long. Vincent Trocheck included. Evidently, the Boston Bruins have expressed interest in him. So that would be an interesting move, of course, with all the stuff back and forth in the playoffs there. So, again, I get you can't always keep everyone, but Nino is really a guy that I feel they really should keep. And we have all the restricted free agents as well. And obviously, we talked about, the guys that are probably going to be gone. Max Domi, Derek Stepan, Brendan Smith, Ian Cole. And, out of all those guys, I do wish that, they'd try to bring back Stepan because, when he did play, he made that bottom line better. And I really think that they could get a short-term, cheap deal done with him. I do. Max Domi, I figured he was probably going to be gone unless, he just had a ridiculous time with the Hurricanes, and he did not. Aside from that one game against Boston in Game 7, really not a whole lot there. Brendan Smith is a guy where he's another one where I feel like they could maybe get something done, but I honestly doubt it. I think, they probably look at, the guys that they have in Chicago, Jalen Chatfield especially. I feel like he's going to be the one to take Brendan Smith's spot. But again, he's a guy where, at first I wasn't 100% sold on him. I thought he wasn't a good fit. He looked like he was struggling to keep up. But, he went out with his skull injury. He came back, and he looked really freaking good. And I think that really helped his chances of getting re-signed by the Hurricanes. And with them going to have so much turnover this offseason, I could really see them trying to bring him back. I don't think it'll happen. I don't. But we'll just have to wait and see, because it's going to be a very interesting offseason for sure. And Ian Cole, he's a guy where, maybe not. I think with him, he's probably a guy he's just looking to get paid now. And, he's already won Stanley Cups, and, he's nearing the end of his career. And he's a guy, I wouldn't be upset if they did bring him back, but it's one that I think, at the start of the year, we all kind of figured he's probably, one and done type guy, unless, just had a crazy good season. But that, we'll just have to wait and see, how some of these guys go. But again, now we have restricted free agents coming up, and we will dive into those guys right after this quick break. BetOnline is your number one source for all of your betting needs and sports info. Find all the latest developments, league reviews, and news, including this year's MLB season. We also have NHL offseason coming up, and there is constant UFC fights, WWE events. There's always something, and BetOnline is your continued source for all of your sports wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores. Heck, there's the Apex Legends tournament happening at PNC Arena just right around the corner, and BetOnline.net remains the best spot for all of your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. BetOnline.net is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all of your favorite sports and events, including MMA, boxing, and golf. Head to the website today and use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. BetOnline, where the game starts. Now, we also have restricted free agents. We've been talking a lot about the unrestricted free agents, but the restricted free agents, all these guys, have been given permission, to talk to other teams. Tony DeAngelo, he's, a guy where I think that the Hurricanes are probably going to do everything they can to keep him. Obviously, I know there's going to be a lot of drama surrounding that, with off-ice stuff and, heck, on-ice stuff, too. His defensive game was not great in the playoffs, and he made a lot of mistakes and a lot of room for improvement there. But I think, they're going to see the offense that he produced, and they're going to do what they can to keep him. He was brought in to replace that offensive defenseman production that they lost when Dougie Hamilton walked. So I really think they're going to do what they can to keep him. Whether or not, we'll see if it happens. And it's going to be an interesting thing, because I think with him, it's something that's always going to be in the back of fans' mind, my mind, probably management's mind as well. All of his drama that he's had with teammates. Do you want to ink him to a long-term deal and then say 2-3 years from now, you're having to release him from that contract. Do you want something like that to happen? So with him, I don't think it'd be a 8-year type deal. I really don't. I think that would be foolish. But I think, a 4, maybe 5-year deal would be realistic there. Money-wise, let's face it, that's probably what's going to come down to there, because he was on a 1-year, $1 million deal, and he's going to get a raise, whether he's with the Hurricanes, the Capitals, Flames, the Kings, whoever he is with, he is getting a big raise. Again, not saying he's going to any of those teams. Those were just the first names that came to my mind. But he is going to be getting a big raise regardless of where he's at. So the Hurricanes will also have to compete with that. Obviously, I think they're going to match whatever, but we'll just have to wait and see with him of what happens. I think Ethan Bear, another restricted free agent, he's been given permission to talk to other teams. I think he's probably going to be gone. He didn't play the entirety of the playoffs. And yeah, we already discussed, COVID was a lingering issue for him. And I just don't see him coming back. I think, being benched for the entirety of the playoffs was a telltale sign for him and his future with the team. Again, he's a guy where I think, if they could maybe get like a really cheap deal done, a team-friendly deal, maybe he comes back. Because he is very young, and he was dealing with COVID. So maybe they bring him back. He does have a lot of upside. But, again, being benched the entirety of the playoffs, I don't think that was a good sign for him. And Marty Necas, I think that's one where he was one where, before last season, I think it was almost a guarantee that the Hurricanes bring him back. But then last season happened, and he did not have a good season. He had an extremely disappointing season. So I think that he is a guy where maybe they bring him back, maybe they don't. He's been given permission to talk to other teams, so I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But I don't think it's a guarantee that he's back. I really don't. And with the way last season went, moves that the Hurricanes have made, I don't know. I don't know. I would love to see him back. He is a guy, he is so young. He is 22 years old. He has so much potential to be a franchise player, but moves have been made. Maybe he's not. Very much like Nino Niederreiter, a guy where you thought he was part of that core. May not be. But this is going to be a very interesting offseason, because then you got other guys on your team that, do you make a trade? What do you do here? I think, we'd all love to have him back. But Stephen Lawrence, is he in a trade package? I don't know. And we already talked about Jalen Chatfield, being ready to make the jump up You also got guys like Jack Drury there in Chicago, who's ready to make that jump. Maybe not full time like I think Chatfield is, but be a guy that could kind of maybe go back and forth some. Maybe he's a guy. Heck, he may be ready to make that jump full time. He was awesome in Chicago, and whenever he was here with the Hurricanes at the end of 2021, when we were having that COVID issue, he looked really freaking good. So is he a guy that comes up and cracks that NHL roster next season? Is he? I don't know. This is one where there are going to be lots of openings on the roster with guys moving out. But we'll just have to wait and see. And again, we're talking about trades, and maybe the Hurricanes make trades. We got one that's actively being done right now, and we'll talk about that right now. Now, when it comes to trades, and free agents, evidently the Hurricanes are actively pursuing Claude Giroux to get him from Florida in free agency. And with Florida's cap situation, it's looking like they may not be able to bring him back. There's also been some talk about Evgeny Malkin with Pittsburgh. I don't see that happening. It would be really weird to see him in a Hurricanes jersey after all these years as well. And then, there's no telling who else is out there. Obviously, there's always a bunch of names getting floated around with every single team, but Claude Giroux is, the name that we're seeing the most right now, at least. And when it comes to trade markets, Jesse Puljujarvi from the Oilers, the Hurricanes have been in contact about that deal as well. And I wouldn't hate it. It would be interesting to see the trade package there of who would be gone, if anyone. You never know. You may end up having like another weird trade like that Max Domi trade where you don't even give up anyone. And so there's no telling what could happen. I know there were some rumblings about Philip Forsberg as well. I think he would be a great addition and really add some offense to this team that they desperately need. And I think an interesting one that has been floated around is Marc-Andre Flurry. Potentially bringing him in, because there has been mutual interest in the past. If you remember, we were talking about that a lot last offseason about the Hurricanes bringing him in and how would that work and how would he fit in. I mean, you'd be a fool not to want that future Hall of Famer on your team, especially when he's still able to go now. But that does raise a question. Okay, what does that mean in terms of your goaltending situation that you have now? You have Frederik Andersen and Antti Raanta, who are coming off of a Jennings Trophy season. Freddie finished fourth in Vezina voting. He could have been a finalist had he not gotten hurt and started to slip there at the end of the season. Antti Raanta had a freaking ridiculous playoff. And then you look over to your AHL, you have Pyotr Kochetkov there who could be ready to make the jump to the NHL right now as well, along with Chatfield and Drury. So do you make that move? I don't know. I wouldn't. It obviously, as a hockey fan, it'd be cool to see Marc-Andre Fleury on your team. Of course it would be cool. But that one, especially depending on the trade package, it could potentially feel like a move just to make a move. Obviously, it'd be interesting to see how your goaltending tandem situation would go, because obviously I don't think they get rid of Frederik Andersen. I think Antti Raanta would be the guy to go in that situation. So you have Frederik Andersen and Marc-Andre Fleury there. That's definitely a 1A, 1B type situation in my opinion. And I think that could be a situation where it could help Freddie in terms of his injury, and he's not taking on such a heavy workload, because that very well could have been something that led to him tearing his MCL last season. He was just going out there and playing so much, and he's injury prone. That was something I talked about when they brought him in. Extremely talented, but injury prone. And is that something you want to do? Bring in another older goaltender. Yes, you have Piotr, who could potentially be your future, after Freddie, Raanta, Flurry, if they were to bring him in. Do they move forward with Piotr as the future? I mean, we thought that about Ned, but he's in Detroit now. So this is going to be a offseason with so many question marks in terms of this roster. Again, it's going to be one like last year. We're going to have a lot of turnover. And heck, you got one guy coming back. You got Jake Gardner. He's healthy, ready to go, been cleared. Where does he fit into all this? Is he even going to be on the Hurricanes? Do they trade him? I don't know. And it's going to be a very, very interesting offseason and season, because the Hurricanes, they're going to make moves. And I think that they are going to make a splash. Whether it's a good splash or a bad splash has yet to be seen, but they're going to make a splash nonetheless, whether it is letting all of these guys walk, bringing a few guys back, letting the others go, trades, whatever it may be. These Hurricanes, they're going to do something. And as always, you can listen to Locked On Hurricanes to find out what the Hurricanes are doing. And you can follow along on Twitter and Instagram at @LO_Hurricanes. My personal Twitter at JaredEllis_96. And in the next episode, the NHL draft is right around the corner, and we will be looking back at the Hurricanes' past draft picks and determine just who is the best draft pick in Hurricanes history.